Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We're on Tuesday Talks, which I think is officially going to be changing its name in the next couple of weeks. I have an intro in the works that's going to, if I get any goddamn time, will be up and ready. It's very like, hello there, and welcome to the show. I'm excited because it's very old-timey sounding. I think we're changing the show name to The Shit Show, and we're just going to call it TSS. I think that's what this is going to have to be. Then I already have a matching mug. I hope you guys are ready. I'm not. I I watched this a little while ago and I haven't really looked at it again since. However, I did get invited to this guy's Discord, which oh boy. So today we're talking about this guy named Kyle. You know, it's a good start when his name is Kyle, and I'm sorry for all the Kyles out there, but oh boy! Oh. Supposedly he has taken down the larger-than-life Aron Ra. Anybody who doesn't know who Aron Ra is, Aron is a well-known activist anti-theist. He was part of the atheist experience for a little while, like the not the show, the association. What the hell were they called? Atheist Community of Austin, ACA. There we go. That's what it was. He was part of the ACA for a long time. He debunked Kent Hovind. Did a back and forth debate, video to video to video to video. Very, very entertaining. He's well known for getting history and philosophy not so wrong, but being not so right, but being very, very good when it comes to biology, because that is his field. And as we've maybe figured out here, when someone is talking in their field, great, fantastic, do that. But when they get out of their field, not so much. I've been critical of Aron in the past. I don't have anything personally against him. I don't think rocks are atheist because I think that's silly. I think it looks silly when you say things like that. But I digress. So today we're gonna find out if Kyle has succeeded in his endeavor, and fair warning, this is what we're starting with. This is the first frame of the video, and oh no, this is a Reddit. This is an old school Reddit rage comment or picture. So yeah, prepare your ears. Yeah, it's just Reddit. It's just Reddit. So we'll lots of hand gestures. I woke up with a little bit of a stuffy nose today, so if I sound stuffy, I promise it's not because I'm doing my old-timey voice. It's just because I'm a little bit stuffed up this morning. Okay. Now that I've updated you about the rate of snot that exists in my orifice of a face, let's jump into this one, shall we? Prep your ears. I'm pretty sure this is gonna peak.
Today I'm going to be debunking Aron Ra. He is one of the oldest and most popular atheist YouTubers. He was a Reddit atheist before Reddit even existed. He is
Aron. His name is Aron, not Aaron. His name is Aron. But okay. I'm not gonna nitpick on his... I'm gonna nitpick, call people by their names, but I am not going to, whether they're given or chosen. Call people by their names. The internet, especially on the internet, like, and you can pick whatever display name and picture you want. So just call people by their names. I go by Chesh. You can call me Chesh. You also may call me Your Majesty. You may also call me the Goblin Queen. Aron Ra. Aron. I'm not gonna pick on his finagly Reddit before Reddit existed, because I know that seems like not the case, but I think he's just being hyperbolic. So let's keep going.
He is a self-described feminist, a Satanist, and he ran for Texas State Senate as a Democrat. Who would have guessed? And he's a part of the same satanic temple that said abortion is a part of religious liberty. They need it for sacrificial purposes.
What? This satanic temple needs abortion for sacrificial purpose? Where was the citation for that? Where was the citation for that? Hold on. I'm going back. Satanic Temple is fighting for abortion rights in Texas. Oh, hold on. I'm going to turn this off for a second. Texas, the Satanic Temple is arguing that the same laws protecting Christian beliefs should equally apply to those who defend the right to abortion. Yeah, that's something that the Satanic Temple does. Okay. And what was your other citation here? No, hold on. Too far. We've gone too far. Yeah, here we go. How the Satanic Temple is using abortion rituals to claim religious liberty against Texans' heartbeat bill. Texas' controversial anti-abortion law, known as the Heartbeat Bill, went into effect at midnight on September 1st, 2021. Less than 24 hours later, the U.S. Supreme Court declared it would not block the law. In response, the Satanic Temple, a non-theistic group that has been recognized by the IRS as a religion, announced that it would fight back by invoking the Religious Freedoms Act, or RFRA, to demand exemption from abortion restrictions on religious grounds. RFRA laws, which came into effect in 1993, restrict the government's ability to burn religious practices. So he's getting sacrifices from religious practices or from the religious grounds. Okay, I see where we're going. He's a Satanist, as in he's part of the Satanic Temple. He does not, from my understanding, does not worship Satan. But let's move on.
Religious liberty. They need it for sacrificial purposes. He is so devout in his Satanism and atheism that he went to Idaho's Day of Prayer to mock.
You can't be a Satanist and worship Satan and be an atheist. You can't be both of those things at the same time. The Satanic Temple is non-theistic. To be clear, non-theistic. They have no deity. They do not worship Satan. That is not what they do. They are basically, if I had to put it simply, I would say they are counterculture to the current leading religion or any religion in general.
Mock and make fun of religion and to do a satanic invocation. Oh, but just ironically.
Lilith! Hail Satan!
Anoint you in the ashes of the false Messiah's word.
We are here today to open your mind and help you out of your delusions. Hail Satan!
Hail Satan!
Yes, a demonstration of protest. A reasonable one at that, I would argue. If somebody's going to say, hey, we're going to pray to our God or your God, then we should be allowed to pray to our God, and there's nothing you can do to stop us, and we're here to make a point. This is not even unusual. They've been doing this for decades. They got if I remember correctly, they didn't like that one of the states, and I can't remember which one because I'm Canadian, I don't remember states, had some kind of religious iconography on state property, like at a courthouse or something. And the Satanic Temple basically commissioned and dumped a big old statue of Baphomet just to make a point. To be like, well, if you can have religious iconography and you're not willing to take your religious iconography out of, like, keep state and religion separated, then anybody's allowed to put whatever religious iconography they follow in front. And they said, oh yeah, of course. And they went, okay, and dropped the big old dick, basically. And so Kyle seems to not understand what the Satanic Temple is, and seems to think that it is in fact worshiping Satan, and thinks that they're worshiping the Satan that he believes in, which is not correct.
I'll talk about the lack of self-awareness in his Satanist, Democrat, and atheist activities later in the video. But what I think is so ironic is that religion has given his life meaning. If there was no religion to debunk, he would have no meaning in his life. He spent his entire career debunking these crazy religionists and creationists. But if there was no religion, he would be a nobody. He would have no point to his life. Religion has unironically given his life a meaning.
Should slavery exist because there was meaning in fighting against slavery? Does that validate slavery? I'm not gonna lie, if cheese didn't exist and wine didn't exist, I feel like I probably wouldn't have much meaning in my life either, but you really don't think the dude would find something else to do? Like, you don't need a religion to have good or bad political policies to argue about, right? You can pretty much take religion out of politics and you still have shit to argue about because people have different philosophies on life. This is just silly to me. You're looking at a hypothetical and saying that this person's life would be absolutely meaningless, even to them, if religion didn't exist. And that seems like nonsense. Especially if you believe, again, particularly if you believe, I can't believe I'm defending Aron here. Especially if you believe in God, right? If you believe in God, whether the religion around that God exists or not, the God still would. So even if all of the Christian religions didn't exist, by the way I'm thinking theocracy, but that's not the word I'm looking for. Theology, there we go. By the theology, the God would exist whether the religion did or did not, and therefore Aron's life would have whatever meaning God would put on him, because the religion isn't what makes the God, God makes the religion, right? So it wouldn't matter? And again, do you really think he wouldn't have found something else to do with his time? Do you not think he would rather be doing other things with his time? I mean, I don't know Aron, and as much as I would love to meet Aron, sadly, we argued about rocks one time. And it wasn't even an argument, and now I'm never gonna meet the guy, and never gonna get to talk to him again, and I'm really upset about it, okay? I don't like that. I'm just so sad. It's so sad. He seems like such a wonderful person to go and have a beer with, but I would suspect that if he didn't have to argue about religion all the time, he would find other things to do with his life.
A point. And what the easiest way to refute someone like this, because most of these atheists have no philosophical training, and
that is correct. A lot of atheists do not have philosophical training. A lot of people do not have any kind of philosophical training in general. Philosophy is been sadly left by the wayside, probably a little bit more than we should have it falling by the wayside, and I agree with this. This is really sad, and I would also say that there is maybe a little bit more respect for philosophy when it comes to if you studied theology. So, like, if you go to become a priest or you go to become a pastor of a church, part of your training and part of your schooling to do so, or if you go to a Christian school, like a university or a college, depending on where you live, generally philosophy is one of the first classes, well, one of the, like, you'll get a philosophy 101 and it's a requirement, right? So particularly if you go to do a pastoral college. So if you go to that, you're going to get theology, which means you're going to get philosophy, meaning that most pastors and most people of any kind of religious clout in that regard will have some kind of philosophical training, more so than atheists. And it really doesn't help when there's a lot of atheist groups that, including Aron, who foo-foo philosophy. And he doesn't do it as much anymore, from my understanding. It's gotten a lot better, but it's because philosophy is... People who study philosophy can be really fucking pompous a lot of the times, and they're just like, they keep talking to people who don't understand philosophy as if they should understand philosophy, and it's like, oh my god, look at me, I'm so smart. And philosophical jargon can be a real hurdle to get over. So if you are looking at getting into philosophy, or you are an atheist who does want to expand your horizons and maybe be able to handle certain types of theological argumentation, or you want to do street epistemology type stuff, I do recommend maybe checking somebody out. I would recommend Answers in Reason and Trolley Dave. They're great over there. And they're also very, very patient and are willing to walk you through those kinds of things. So, like, why Ed Rock isn't an atheist is a good way to start, and how that doesn't make any goddamn sense. But I digress. Yes, most atheists do not have philosophical training, and most Christians don't have philosophical training because overall most people don't have any kind of philosophical training. So I agree with him on this. He's right here.
What I am going to show, we're going to see him literally refute himself. And he is so spiteful in his atheism. He says, no, I don't have any faith. No, that's so stupid. The Bible has...
Stop zooming in like that, please, for the love of God. I keep having to, like, lean away from my computer because we're just constantly slow zooming into this man's face. Please stop.
Nothing correct.
Absolutely wrong about
absolutely everything back to front. There is no truth in the Bible. Yeah, there's an Ethiopia somewhere.
The Bible has absolutely nothing correct in it. Everything in it is absolutely wrong. This next clip is going to show his complete ignorance in philosophy, because Aron Ra and most of these atheists are scientism fundamentalists. And
I'm going to need a definition for a scientism fundamentalist. Chat, can you please give me your best definition for scientism fundamentalist? I would love to hear what that would be. And Dapper makes a good point. He says, I will say that Aron saying that there's nothing right in the Bible is really dumb. What it is it's rhetorical. He's exaggerating, because you can hear in the second half of the clip that gets cut off. Yeah, sure, there is an Ethiopia somewhere. I think it's extreme, but we know this from Aron. Aron is very, like, aggressive in his counter apologetics, counter apologetics, in his counter, like, anti-theism, right? He's not just an atheist. He doesn't just believe that gods don't exist. He also doesn't like religion and is against theism as a concept, right? So he does use very flowery, rhetorical, over-the-top language, and he exaggerates when he's talking in the street, and that there's no surprise there, the same way anybody who's protesting any kind of thing does. Is it a little bit extreme language? Yeah, sure, but I don't think he's being literal. Even though he's saying literally. He's saying literally, figuratively. Let's see. Presumably a naturalist. See you later, generic. Thanks for stopping by. Scientism fundamentalist. Noun. A person who believes that empiricism is the only way to gain information about anything and is very consistent in that belief. Wait, is that actually, like, did you get that out of a dictionary? Like, where did you get, or did you make that up right now? Science fundamentalism is a scientist that has based their foundation on science from the fundamentals of gymnastics. I don't know. Has Aron done the Bronze Age Bible meme? Probably. My father, TomTom says, my father, when I was a teenager, used to tell me, quote, now you are philosophizing. I used to take it as an insult. Now I know my father just ran out of arguments. Oh, no. Philosophizing. Whoa. Dapper says I came up with it, but scientism is the philosophical position that empirical evidence is the only kind of evidence that can reliably lead to correct beliefs. Yes. Okay. You got a good one. I like your definition. All right, I'm gonna keep going.
And if they just took literally the most basic philosophy of science class, they would not make these mistakes. I took a philosophy of science class. This is a common book that we use. If you just read through this, you would not make the same arguments. You would not fall into the fallacies that Aron Ra, this king atheist.
Aron. His name is Aron. I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but that book was backwards. I don't know if you guys noticed. Let's see if I can get him waving it around again.
Class. This is a
See, it's backwards. But okay, maybe I'm jumping the gun here, and you guys can let me know if you think that's the case. When you say if they took a single class of philosophy and got a philosophy 101, and then say I took a philosophy 101 and now I see all these flaws everywhere, I'm getting this really strong sense of Dunning-Kruger. Like you took philosophy 101, read a book, and now you clearly know more than everybody else. And I get concerned when people say things like that. And you took one, did you? You took a class? Clearly, you're the greatest mind of our age now. Behold, a man. Ugh, God. Although, to be fair, I haven't taken a philosophy class. So I can't say that I'm doing better or anything, or I know anymore. I just get concerned.
A common book that we use. If you just read through this, you would not make the same arguments. You would not fall into the fallacies that Aron Ra, this king atheist, made.
Rhetoric is something different, and philosophy has, like, there's philosophy of argumentation, there's philosophy of, like, the universe and everything, and then there's the philosophy of self, right? So he's talking, logical fallacies fall into the rhetoric category of philosophy. And yeah, being facetious or speaking candidly in a group and exaggerating are common rhetorical tactics.
He doesn't have any self-awareness. Now let's watch Aron Ra refute himself.
You make popular YouTube videos, you've got millions of hits, and you don't know the basics about instrumentalism, realism, constructive empiricism, selectionism, constraints. You don't know none of
Those
this.
are philosophical. I'm not interested in philosophy.
So if you're not interested in philosophy, why are you talking about metaphysics? Why are you talking about the existence of God? Why are you dismissing all of philosophy of science?
I specified scientific evidence.
And by the way, listen, here's the thing. If you
So he makes a good point. I agree a little bit with this. If you are not interested in philosophy, why are you having conversations within the space of philosophy? And I don't think that's a detriment to Aron, but I do think that's a good point. If you're going to talk about religion, if you're going to talk about the existence of God, or you're going to talk about like why the universe exists, and you're going to say that somebody is wrong about that, then it's reasonable to expect somebody to say, okay, well, what do you know about theology, right? It makes sense that if you're going to argue philosophy and you're going to argue theology, that you have taken some note of philosophy and theology. However, I would also point out that Aron also has a point. If Aron is focusing on the sciences that are utilized by theology one way or another, whether you go the route of like young earth creationism and you just get everything wrong all the time, or whether you go the other direction and say, okay, well, we can agree that God, or you start going into like, what's it called? Oh God, brain, hello? Reduction. You go to infinite reduction, where it's just like, well, God made the universe. Okay, well, who made God? Yada, 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 yada. Right? You go like the Big Bang. God did the Big Bang or something like that. You end up being like, okay, but you can't... How? So you can say that you could criticize religion, and you can criticize the religious organization's use or interpretation of science without inherently going into questions about, like, does God exist? But if you are going to have the conversation about does God exist, you do need to understand that you have stepped into philosophy and you have stepped into theology, so it would be good to have some kind of knowledge in that field. Infinite regress. Thank you. Bless your heart. Thank you. Yes, infinite regress. Although I do enjoy that the Orthodox over here is relying on definitely not Orthodox guy over here to do the philosophizing for him. On the other hand, as far as I understand, well, never mind, it doesn't matter. Let's go.
you understood the philosophy of science, you wouldn't be making the statements you're making now. That's what I'm saying.
And all I'm saying is all I'm saying is
Is what?
is that you are wrong.
He literally responds like a child. He goes,
Nuh-uh, you're wrong. Okay.
if you took philosophy of science, you know that there are things assumed prior to doing science. The only reason we have the scientific endeavor, that it can be justified, epistemology, the theory of knowledge, how you can have knowledge about these scientific claims, that you can actually, use inductive reasoning, you can use.
He's throwing out a lot of jargon now. So here's the thing. When you throw out a lot of jargon, and you don't explain what that jargon is, you're not really debunking. If you just say, look at all these fallacies he's making, and you don't sit down and show us one and then explain what the fallacy is and why it applies, you haven't debunked anything. You're simply making the claim that that is the case, right? And sure, you can do that, but that's not a debunk. To debunk, you'd have to take his statement about whatever it is, whether it's fallacious or not, and Aron can be fallacious. I don't think anybody agrees with that. Aron is not very good at philosophy, but it's not impressive to beat up somebody who says they admittedly doesn't understand philosophy, is admittedly not interested in philosophy, with philosophical jargon. Like, that's not impressive.
Use deductive reasoning, all the things that are required for the scientific method itself, you need philosophy for. But he just said he's not interested in philosophy.
You said that science doesn't achieve truth.
So if you're saying something doesn't
does.
correspond to reality,
So challenge the philosophers of science who say it doesn't.
God does not
Okay, but we established the truth is what the facts are, right? All we needed to do.
Correspondence theory of truth, fine.
All we had to understand was what you mean by truth. So these guys say truth is what conforms to reality. The truth is what the facts are. Then your statement is wrong. Using that definition.
So are you saying selectionism is wrong?
you then have to bring in certain.
No, I don't.
You're talking to Aron about something he's not interested in and doesn't understand. You're having two different conversations, right? There's a conversation to be had about the philosophy of science and what assumptions need to be made to be able to do science in the first place. There's something to be said about, like, solipsism, right? Never go full solipsism, because you it's so I say reductive, but it's not really reductive. It goes so far off into the weeds. Aron is talking to the average person. The average person does not know whether or not, like, what type of reasoning they are using, whether it's inductive, whether it's deductive, right? These are not things that are often studied by people. So when Aron says something along the lines that science can tell us what is true, he's not debating truth. He's already made the assumption. He's saying, we can tell that something is true, we can know something in totality, or at least it's possible to know something. And these are assumptions he's making for the point that he's trying to get across. And because he's not interested in philosophy, there's really no goddamn point in telling him to go debate philosophy of science and tell them that they're wrong, because that's not what he is talking about. It's ships passing in the night screaming at each other. Sorry, I'm just going to check chat real quick. Excuse me. Does Kyle think that pointing out the philosophical shortcomings of Aron means that God exists, or even more specifically, that the Eastern Orthodox Church is the visible church on earth? I mean, that's a good point. Ricardo says the problem with Aron is that despite his disdain for philosophy, he wants to challenge philosophical arguments. Aron is a pigeon playing chess who knows that he can only shit all over the chessboard. In some situations, yes. I don't. Again, I'd have to do a little bit. I feel like I'd have to talk to the guy, because I think he does want to challenge it, but I think I don't know. There's something to it that it's not. It doesn't seem like that's his intention. Do you know what I mean? When, again, if he's arguing truth, or he's saying that science can tell us what is true, it's like, okay, but is he arguing the science, like, philosophy of science? I don't think he is. I think there's something to be said about, like, taking someone for where they're at in a conversation. Again, these are not conversations, these are debates and arguments and people yelling at each other, so excuse me. And yes, Smitty makes a good point. Aron doesn't realize he's interested in engaging in philosophy at an amateur level. I think that he is interested in philosophy, but I think that I shouldn't say, not his method. I don't mean him. I don't think he's the problem. I think Aron is sort of his approach and the way he goes about things is more of like an example of a problem in the system of the way philosophy is taught and the way it's considered like highbrow and not useful, right? And so like the way it's taught and the way it's viewed by society is like leading down this line, right? It's leading people into these positions to be like, well, philosophy is useful, but I'm gonna have this other conversation over here, right? And like it's one of those things where science doesn't exist without philosophy. Science also doesn't. Like, the same problem with Crocoduck from the other day, right? From Friday. You don't have all your sciences without social science. The line between hard science and soft science that's not real. It's an arbitrary, like, gray line that we draw between having enough data and not having enough data. So we can get data and accumulate data, and it's like this is a soft science of a branch of psychology until it's neurology, until it's chemistry, until it's physics, until it's math. And you can go the other way, right? It's math until you can apply it to, and theoretical until you can apply it, until you can move it into and decide how to categorize things. So, anyway, I just think that when it comes to Aron and discussing these types of things, do I think that Aron is wrong? Yeah, most of the time. Do I think his approach isn't helpful? Sure. But I don't think that's his intention. His intention is to use a lot of simplistic, to take things that are complicated and reduce them down to to something that is simple, and that's not inherently wrong. However, I agree that he should take a philosophy class if he's going to engage in these kinds of discussions.
You don't know anything about selection.
Exactly.
It may be right. So I may be of the same position that you are, because the way you describe it sounds like what I subscribe to.
No. But you believe in scientific. It sounds like you believe in scientific realism.
Why? Because I would have thought that I believed in empiricism.
No. Okay, Aron. Like, this is getting really silly now, right? Empiricism, scientific realism, two different categories. No. It's two different.
Yeah, he doesn't understand the categories. So leading him down this path of questioning is just why? Why? Especially for a position of, like, where they're doing sort of a street back and forth, right? It's really just not what he knows or what he's good at, nor what he's really talking about most of the time. Never mind.
Categories, right? They're both empiricism.
Okay.
For you to think scientific realism is something different to to empiricism, it's two different things.
Give your descriptions again.
Okay.
He's been doing this his whole life, and he doesn't know the most basic definitions in philosophy of science. Like, literally.
He's never gonna learn them. Stop asking him to. Jargon is not important. Jargon is only important in, like, papers, but you can write a paper without using the jargon. The jargon is just to make that field more simple when you're talking to people in that field. Throwing a bunch of philosophical terms at Aron that's not good. Throwing a bunch of philosophical terms to somebody who admittedly doesn't know and is uninterested in philosophy, they're not going to learn the terms. They're not going to learn the jargon, and expecting them to is absurd to me. Like, there's no reason for it. If you can't have a conversation with a layperson, this is what I mean. Philosophy is viewed as this highbrow, fancy-dancy thing, and people don't learn it, and they don't know it because you're expecting them to understand this jargon, and you're making the bar of entry too high. And when you make for no reason outside of keeping it in, like, your fancy ivory towers, why? Everyone uses philosophy. You use philosophy at the grocery store when you decide to pick one thing over another, because guess what? You've made a decision. When you go out your door in the morning, you've used philosophy because you decided to leave your house. There, you made a decision. And the rationale behind that decision. And when you jump from, now, because keep in mind, the guy in this video, it's Kyle over here, has jumped from talking about fallacies and talking about the philosophy of science, both of which he has not explained nor shown. He's doing the just as bad as Aron is. He's just throwing shit out there and seeing what's gonna fucking stick. It's not new to anybody that Aron is not interested and doesn't know philosophy. He admits to that. He said that. So where's the debunk? Right? However, if you don't, and you can't explain it, what are you talking about? You're relying on the people who are viewing your video to already know what you're saying and already be on board with what you're talking about. You're preaching to a choir, basically. So who's your video for? Because how is anybody who going to take your video and say, well, Aron doesn't, and go argue about Aron or whatever the fuck, and say, okay, well, Aron doesn't understand the philosophy of science, and the person goes, okay, why? And you go, well, see, look at this clip here, and it's just like, okay, so explain it. What part of the philosophy of science does he not understand? What is the philosophy of science? You have to understand that when you're having, especially when you're already admitting at the beginning of the video that atheists don't understand philosophy, you're gonna walk up to an atheist and say, atheists don't understand philosophy, and they go, okay, we don't care. If you want people to take your argument seriously, you need to be able to, one, explain it, and you need to be able to, two, make them care about whatever it is you're talking about. Philosophy doesn't have to be this unattainable, jargon-filled, riddled ball of fuck. It can just be your style of decision-making, and whether you use deductive, you could use Sherlock Holmes as an allegory and say, look at what he's doing, that's philosophy. Ta-da! And there you go. Dear Lord. But no, this guy took a philosophy class, so he clearly knows. I don't know if that's an L or an I. I'm gonna assume it's an L and call you Lop. For 5 said, Aron might like Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance philosophy. I mean, yeah, there might be things that he does enjoy, and it's a shame that there's so much, like, gatekeeping when it comes to philosophy. I think I'm gonna call it gatekeeping. And a gatekeep. Yeah, this video reads like a Reddit post. You're right. You're right, Over. I agree with you. Okay, let's keep going.
You take the first class and you would learn these. But as we can see, he said, no, I don't do philosophy. Well, yeah, it's showing.
It's two different things.
Give your descriptions again.
Okay, scientific realism, scientific instrumentalism.
And what are they?
Okay, scientific realism is we believe in claims about observables that scientists make, and we believe in claims which are made about unobservable entities, structures, and processes.
Can you give me an example?
Okay, so for example, relativity. General relativity says time and space is flexible, and it also makes other sort of claims, and you have claims, for example, in quantum mechanics about the Copernican interpretation and this interpretation.
Okay.
This is actually really good and impressive to have done on the fly, by the way, to be able to just rattle off what these things are and come up with good examples. So applause to this guy, by the way. Good job. Props to you. I don't know why you're trying to have this conversation with Aron, but other than that...
that many worlds want.
Okay.
So a scientific realist would say, when scientists are talking about the unobservables, entities, structures, and processes, they are talking about actual things, right? So that's realism. The second view is scientific...
there are people who think that we talk about God is not real?
It's really important in the philosophy of science. So there's scientific...
I don't know if you caught what Aron said just there. He mentioned like the properties of God, and that tells you exactly how they're having completely different conversations. They're talking about different shit. Aron is speaking within this sphere, and our street epistemology philosophy friend over here is speaking in this sphere, and those spheres do cross over, but neither of them want to, which is why they're not, both of them are looking for a gotcha. They're not having a conversation and learning or merging these things, and you'll see that in a second.
Scientific realism and scientific anti-realism. If you're a scientific realist, do you think that the things that you're actually studying are actually real things in the universe, versus a scientific anti-realist has more of like an instrumentalist point of view, or basically we make up these things, we make up these social constructs that aren't actually real, that are used to describe the universe?
Stop zooming in, and I applaud you for finally first explaining something. Thank you. I appreciate that. We're almost halfway through the video before we got an explanation, which he's just repeating somebody else already said.
No. I'm talking about scientific realism and scientific instrumentalism. Okay, now tell me whether you agree with scientific instrumentalism. Scientific instrumentalism says this: we believe in claims that scientists make about observable entities.
I don't like the term believe in either case, but go ahead.
I'm just giving you philosophical definitions.
Okay, yeah, I don't like those.
Okay, I know you clearly don't. So, claims about unobservable...
Yes, people being frustrated with... I don't like how this gets brushed off. It makes sense in the context of, like, what we're watching, that got brushed off, right? Like, he's like, I don't like those. Talking about philosophical definitions and philosophical terminology. Yeah, because you've set a high barrier of entry. Philosophy asks for a lot from people. Why? I don't fucking know. Why did we make philosophy the upper echelon, high-end people? I don't know. Why do we... My face so washed out. I don't know. Why do we keep fields of science or fields of study out of the hands of the common people? Because that's something we actively do. Business used to not be something you could easily get a hold of and study. Taxes. Why are taxes so hard? Like, why is the process so fucking goddamn complicated for no fucking reason? Particularly in America? It shouldn't be. Why is it? They make the barrier of entry difficult on purpose. Same with stocks. Stocks are really hard to understand. Why are stocks really hard to understand? Because the information is riddled with jargon and difficult to get a hold of to analyze it, and you have to invest time. Right? You're asking Aron to invest time into jargon. Why? Why should he? He should, because it expands your horizon and makes you better at argumentation, and if you want to have the conversations that he clearly wants to have, it would benefit him. But you know what would be more beneficial? If philosophy wasn't being gatekept by people who think they're just smarter than everybody else because they learned philosophy. Right. Vesta says, even though I have 2 PhDs in computer science and engineering, I have 2 friends that have PhD in philosophy, and honestly, I could care less about philosophy. Right. People don't care about philosophy because philosophy doesn't give them a reason to. Nobody studying philosophy gives people a reason to fucking care about philosophy. School doesn't give you a reason to care about philosophy. School doesn't give you a reason, like an applicable usage. Society doesn't give 2 shits about philosophy because that's how it's been presented to them for so fucking long. This absolutely fucking makes sense. And where Aron comes from makes 100% sense, because he's dealing with the reality, and he's being pragmatic about the situation, right? So you can take your philosophy and you can talk, you can move up over here and have these conversations about how do we know something, and how do we know that something is true, and what does science actually do, and yada 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 yada. However, the difference between the two that they're talking about, right? Realism and anti-realism, doesn't matter to most people, because it doesn't matter whether or not you can walk out your door and start your car. You had to use the philosophy of science to get there, but it's happening in the background. And you jump the shark when you go outside of what people deal with in their day-to-day lives. But philosophy is all over your day-to-day life. Philosophy just doesn't make it obvious, and nobody teaching philosophy fucking makes that obvious. Because for whatever reason, we're putting this crazy barrier of entry to philosophy. Aron clearly likes talking philosophy. Obviously. And that's fine, he's allowed to enjoy it, but he enjoys specific aspects of it. And everything else is just gobbledygook nonsense because philosophy goes out of its way to make itself unnecessarily complicated.
Entities, processes, and structures, we are going to be agnostic about them. We're not going to say they are true, we're not going to say they are false, we're just going to remain agnostic about them. Now, I've given you two divergent views, and there's some views in the middle, right? Now, which ones do you subscribe to? Instrumentalism. Now, if you believe in instrumentalism, what you're basically...
believe in.
Okay,
Subscribe to?
Do you subscribe to it?
Yeah. I think that more here's... Yeah, that seems to
you subscribe to it.
So Aaron Ra just said he believes in scientific instrumentalism. These things aren't actually real, they're just...
That's not what he said. What he said was, out of the two that you've described, I identify closer with that one. In a shot-for-shot situation. This is clearly not Aron coming out and saying, hey, no, this is my process, this is my epistemology, this is how I view the world, yada, yada, yada. This is clearly not the case. But if you want to present it that way,
okay, you subscribe to it.
So Aaron Ra just said he believes in scientific instrumentalism. These things aren't actually real, they're just tools to help us describe, but they're just social constructs. Now this is very important because the whole reason he doesn't believe in God, oh, I don't believe it, there's no facts, there's no evidence, they aren't actually real. Oh, I don't believe in an invisible sky daddy, that isn't real. So we're going to see him contradict himself.
When scientists are talking about unobservable entities, processes, and structures, they are not saying something which is true. They are saying something which it might be true or might be false. They're agnostic about it. So if you're a scientific instrumentalist, that means Darwinian evolution, which you support.
And what do you think Darwinian evolution?
Wait, hang on.
And now we're getting into, well, what is Darwinian evolution, because that's throwing a little bit of salt in there.
Wait, hang on. Hang on.
Serious.
Hang on. Wait, hang on. That basically means you don't believe it to be true if you're an instrumentalist. So that basically means this whole time, Aron.
This is exactly why we all need to study philosophy, especially pop atheists like this guy, because most atheists make the most basic fallacies. They rely on rhetoric and deception, and that convinces most people. But all it takes is some basic philosophical knowledge to literally make him, Aaron, walk into a...
Aron. Then explain the fallacy. Explain which fallacy that Aron just pulled, and then show us how it's applicable. Because you know what's really, really, really annoying, and atheists do this a lot? They throw fallacies out and are completely unable to show where the fallacy is, or what the fallacy is. They jump the gun. So tell us which fallacy he's committing, and how, and what he could have done to avoid it. That would have been a debunk. You just saying that he did a thing does not debunk what he did or did not do. You have to be able to go through and explain it. Gotta put you pronouncing Aron on a soundboard at this point. Yeah, almost feels like it.
A circle and refute himself.
Well, he's got a different definition.
Aaron, you know what you just did? I made a little hole, you walked into it.
No, I didn't.
You just admitted you're a scientific instrumentalist.
If you want to call that
You did say that. You did say that. That means you believe science doesn't give you truth, but gives you instrumentally useful theories.
Oh no, but it can show what is true.
Don't deny that. But that means that your claims about science gives you truth is false.
Such a powerful...
And this is what I mean. You're talking in completely different fields. It's not impressive to use jargon of a field to semantic someone in, like, using semantics they don't understand into walking into a hole, especially on the fly. Like, this is not difficult nor impressive. Actually, I think it's a little bit embarrassing and a little bit cringe. Now, again, I have problems with Aron. I don't like the way he approaches philosophy, and I don't like the way he represents a lot of philosophy, and I don't like the way he is not willing to even engage in that conversation with people who are maybe not bad actors and assumes that they are. However, this is not the conversation he is having. So let me just catch up on chat real quick. The way I have my screen layout is not the greatest for this right now. I'm working on getting it fixed, but we'll get there. Dapper says, I think Aron is actually a scientific realist, but he doesn't like admitting beliefs. Yeah, he avoids beliefs like the plague, which is fine. It makes sense for what he's doing and what he's about and where he lives. Like, there's a bunch of context around that, and I mean, it doesn't ultimately matter because there are synonyms that you can use that are essentially the same thing. But if you want to go into, like, whether or not he is a scientific realist, you can have a conversation to say, okay, so that means that you don't believe that scientific theories are telling us what is true, or you have to be agnostic about whether the theory that is presented is actually inherently the case. And the answer is that, yeah, no, Aron wouldn't disagree with any of that, I don't think. Particularly in this video, but particularly with what I've seen of him before. Of course he would say, yeah, there's a % chance that we could be wrong. And now we're conflating different kinds of agnosticism. Right? We're conflating whether or not, like, we're conflating certainty, right, with whether or not something can ever even be 100% true. And science tends to lean towards that it does not show what is 100% true. Most people that are science communicators will tell you that science can always be wrong, but the chances of it being wrong are more or less depending on what you're talking about and which field you're looking at and whether we're talking about theoreticals and yada, 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 yada. This isn't a debunk of Aron. Aron's been like this the whole time. There's nothing new here. Of course he's going to say that, well, is there a possibility that God exists? He's going to say, probably no, because that's his belief. But if you were to push him on it, he'd say, well, yeah, I guess there's like a % chance, yada, yada, and that % chance is 0.0000 ad infinite 1, right? So it again, we're talking about certainty and whether or not you can even know something. And to present it as if I don't think he walked into a hole there, personally. Not the hole that they want to paint this as. He walked into that if science says that evolution is the case, you don't actually believe in evolution. And that's not what he is saying, right? He is saying that science can have errors and science can be wrong and we are limited, which is what most people would say when it comes to that. So, do you want to flip it around and put it onto a God belief? Sure. You can do that. But again, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking out my ass. Maybe I'm just talking out my ass, and I don't fucking know what the problem is. But hey. Yeah, Sabor pointing out that Aron doesn't know what his own philosophy of science is doesn't really help with debunking evolution, which is what he tried to do. Right, exactly. So it doesn't, he's trying to show a hole in Aron's philosophy when Aron doesn't ascribe to a philosophy. This is not something that Aron has spent time doing. This is as far as he presents himself. I mean, maybe he's done it somewhere else. Maybe he's done it in his private life. I don't fucking know. I don't know the guy. I'm not on the phone with Aron being like, hey, did you do your meditation today? No. It's possible that he has a philosophy, but he doesn't know what it is, and therefore he would not know how to argue it or present it in a way that is comprehensible, which makes sense. Why would he? Why would you expect him to be able to do so? But to tell him he doesn't believe that Darwinistic evolution is true because he may or may not, depending on how you define Darwinism, Darwinian evolution, doesn't change whether or not what the truth of the matter is. Again, we're dealing with pragmatism versus and this is why people don't like philosophy. It's this kind of shit. Because saying that it's like, okay, so if you open your door, can you prove you don't know that the door to your house is going to lead into your house? And the answer is yeah, you don't. But this is like a concept that does not apply to your day-to-day life for you to bother fucking thinking about for any real length of time, because it's a metagame bullshit conversation. It's a bullshit conversation in that, like, we're gonna sit in our hoity-toity shit, we're gonna drink rye, or we're gonna drink fancy whiskey and smoke out of our pipes with our overcoats, and we're a bunch of old people being like, these peasants don't understand that they don't even know if they're walking in their front door. It's absurd. And so when you start having a conversation with somebody who's like, listen, every time I open my door, it goes to my house. And then you say, yeah, but you don't know that. And they're like, yeah, I do, because every other time I've done it. It's like, yeah, but you can't prove that, not without opening the door. And it's like, you're being a pedantic asshole, right? You're being a pedantic dick because you're having a different conversation, right? If you understand what I'm saying. Does that mean philosophy has no use? No, philosophy has a use, and knowing that you can't prove that you're walking into your house is important. Knowing that and being able to have that conversation is great. And having those conversations with people in that field makes sense. Having conversations with someone like Aron doesn't make sense. It's not what he's talking about. It's not what he's interested in. He's never going to be interested when people are acting like this shit. And you're just driving people away from philosophy. And when you use a philosophical jargon loophole that you think you got you, this is what I said. Remember a minute ago when I said they're just trying to got you? Yeah. That is not going to convince people to like philosophy, and it sure as hell isn't going to convince them that monkeys didn't evolve. You're in different fields. Trying to gotcha each other with your opposite field is not going to help anybody.
Because Aaron Ra's whole thing is
science gives us truth. Religion, that can't give us truth.
Aron.
But he just admitted that science can't give him truth. It can give him instrumental, useful things, but it cannot give him truth. It just refuted 99% of his apologetics.
I already went over how that's bunk. Anyway, I'm just gonna keep going. Yeah, I'm stuck in an infinite regress. I feel like, yeah, I did repeat myself too much. I apologize.
Have Christianity divided into 30,000 different denominations because it's throwing a dart blindfolded, and wherever the dart lands, you draw a bullseye around it. Everybody's.
I don't think he's actually just referring to Protestants. I would suspect, because I haven't seen the whole clip, I would suspect that he would also be considering Catholic, the various types of Protestants, as well as Orthodox. And if you push it, he might be talking about Latter-day Saints, and Jehovah's Witness, at least, and probably Mormon. He might throw Mormon in there, but I'm speculating. I would suspect.
Claiming to know things that none of them know.
Another basic level fallacy. When an atheist attempts to make an argument like this, you can just bring it back on them. Okay, well, these top scientists, they have different ideas, they have different theories, therefore none of them are right. That's literally the same.
What? Sorry, I'm going to put this back.
9% of his apologetics.
Why do we have Christianity divided into 30,000 different denominations? Because it's throwing a dart blindfolded. And wherever the dart lands, you draw a bullseye around it. Everybody's claiming to know things that none of them know.
Another basic level fallacy. When an atheist attempts to make an argument like this, you can just bring it back on them. Okay, well, these top scientists, they have different ideas, they have different theories, therefore none of them are right. That's literally the same logic you're using against religion, against denominations. Oh, there's multiple denominations, therefore none of them is right.
No. So in this scenario, we have different denominations that have competing ideas and few data points, like few evidences, right? So you say that, well, this person had an experience, and this person has an experience, and this person had an experience, and you say, okay, these all fall under the experience category of evidence, because whether you like it or not, someone's experience is evidence. How much stock you put in that evidence is going to be up to you and your decision and who that person is to you, and yada, 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 yada. So it may or may not be convincing, right? And then you can say, all right, well, what other evidence do we have? Well, let's say we have the Bible. We'll put the Bible in hearsay evidence. All right, so we're going to, although it should probably be in the experience evidence, we're going to put it in its own because it's like a document at the very least. And then what else do we got? And then you can kind of nitpick over maybe, oh, well, a miracle happened here, right? You can say, take miracles and slap them into, I mean, probably experience, because how do you measure a miracle? But I digress. If you have competing theories about something, right? The top level scientists are not competing, don't have competing theories about evolution. Well, they might have them about evolution, but of evolution. Evolution is pretty well established and has been through a lot of rigorous back and forths to it. So a better example would be like Darwin and, there was Darwinian evolution at the time, and then there was another guy whose name escapes me, and they had competing theories. Darwin's theory won out, this guy's theory did not, so therefore that one stays, and it has gone through whatever it's gone through since then. However, data points are still data points. So if I say, well, we've got a data point for dropping a pen for gravity. Okay, cool. And we can measure the rate that it fell and yada, yada, yada. That doesn't fall under experience. That is universal. And you can measure where there's changes, and then you can start to speculate as to why. And you can start to hypothesize about why there are these changes, right? Until you get enough data points to be able to establish a fact, right? So these are not comparable. Right? Arguing about the nuances of something, which denominations of Christianity do, if you're starting on a premise that's not feasible to begin with, you're gonna run into trouble. God existing has some evidence, but does it have enough to support any singular religion, right? Is there any religion that has more than another one when it comes to evidence of their belief or their practice? Doesn't seem to be the case. That's not the case when it comes to scientific theory, right? There are situations where you have enough evidence, or you have enough like data points, and you say, okay, well, both of these theories right now are equally as plausible. You can have that happen. And then as you get more data, you then see one raising over the other and them competing, and sometimes there'll be a breakthrough where suddenly this one that was up here, suddenly this one is just like, oh no, actually it's gotta be this. Higgs boson is a good example of this. And you're talking like now in theoretical physics, like physics and quantum theory. I digress. This is not a good comparison. It's fallacious and it's not going to work, and I just explained why it was fallacious. You're comparing apples and oranges.
If you literally just understood basic Christianity, you would know that we live in a fallen world where people want to follow themselves so of course there's going to be schism and division. And again, some are going to be more true than others, and there is obviously one that is true. Just like in science, there is one theory that is true, and maybe some other theories get some little things right, but ultimately there is one truth. Again,
So, Philosophy 101 guy over here seems to be purporting that there is one truth. In philosophy, there is more than one theory of truth. So which one, Kyle, are you purporting to for this? There are multiple ways of looking at the world, and sometimes two things can be true at the same time, believe it or not. So, you have theories that all roll into each other, and it seems to me that you don't know what a theory is at this point, and I think I'm willing to tack that one up there. Doesn't know what a theory is.
Again, it's just a basic fallacy.
Faith is the
Which one? Which fallacy is it? How?
most dishonest position it is possible to have. It is inherently auto-deceptive and cannot lead to truth because there's no way to define what is correct and what is false.
Why do you say that, Aaron? Because in the previous clip, you refuted yourself.
Aron.
You showed that science cannot give you truth. It can only give you useful things, but it cannot give you truth.
No. He didn't show that. Well, hold on, because that would be huge. If Aron Ra suddenly showed up and was like, look, I have shown that science cannot do this thing that has been in philosophy for ever, that would be amazing. So no, he didn't show that. He didn't show that at all. It's a bit of a jump, bit of a leap you've made there. What he said was that this description seems to fit me best. For jargon in a field that he doesn't understand and purports that he's not interested in. So, no, he didn't. What you're trying to say, I'm going to be nice about this, what you're trying to say is that Aron disagrees with himself that science cannot actually tell us what is true. But again, that's not what he said in that clip. He said that science still could tell us what was true. Did you listen to your own clip when you were editing this? Or scripting this? Did you script this? I hope you scripted this, because this would be really yikes if this is the way you talk. If you talk about what Aron actually said, he said, I purport to this side. I'm leaning this side. This description fits me. And then when he said, so you don't think that Darwinian theory is true or can be true, you just think it's a useful tool, he said, no, I think that science can tell us what is true. So when he says science tells us what is true, he's not disagreeing with himself. He's just unsure or wishy-washy about what he actually, what philosophical epistemology he actually follows along with. And that should not be a surprise because he doesn't care about philosophy. He hasn't spent the time on this. My God. Bruh.
But you just said, oh, faith can't give you truth. You just contradicted yourself.
So, according to your worldview, how do you tell what is correct and what is false? How do you know what truth is? This is what I've been trying to ask you.
What I've been trying to answer over and over again is I've been successfully answering, you just haven't heard it yet. The truth is what the facts are. Repeat it back to me so I don't have to say it again.
The truth is what the facts are. Aron Ra. Wow, what a
Aron.
groundbreaking take. As if there are things as just brute facts that don't require interpretation.
I find that odd coming from people, particularly the people that Aron argue with. I don't know if Kyle hasn't really brought forth whatever his fucking opinion is about the matter. He's just saying somebody else is wrong. He hasn't really brought a whole lot to the table. But the people that Aron tends to argue with, because I'm not going to say Orthodox or any whatever denomination, tend to lean towards that there is objective morality and that God is a brute fact. Would you disagree that God is a brute fact? in your theology. Because you're saying that he's purporting that there are brute facts as if that's silly. Also, thank you for noticing my earrings. My sister bought them for me for Christmas.
We interpret everything within our paradigm. We can look at the same exact set of facts, yet we interpret it within our paradigm and we come to different conclusions.
That's why it would be important for you to tell us when you say truth and such, what theory of truth you're utilizing. Thank you, Philosophy 101.
This guy he's a classical foundationalist, but again, he doesn't even know basic philosophy. He doesn't know any of this.
Ultimate standard.
No, you don't.
From God.
No, you don't.
Says that it's, how do you know?
You don't have a standard. You don't have, because you have nothing that indicates what is right or what is wrong. Nothing that says which is true or what is metaphorical and what is literal.
So there are parts of the Bible that will say that what God says is truth and this dictates and yada yada, here's the 10 Commandments, blah, blah, blah. What Aron's talking about is that the Bible is inconsistent and religious organizations are inconsistent. And whether or not you interpret the Bible literally or metaphorically, and there doesn't seem to be a set standard to say definitively, like, yes, this is philosophy, and no, yes, this is literal, and no, this is metaphorical. And I don't disagree with him on that.
You can't discern any of it.
Without the scriptures, yes, you're right. It would all be arbitrary.
With the scriptures, you are powerless. The scriptures offer you nothing. They are absolutely wrong about absolutely everything, back to front. There is no truth in
the satanic arrogance. Please pray for him. Christianity is absolutely wrong
about absolutely everything.
He didn't say Christianity. He said the Bible. He didn't say Christianity was absolutely wrong, although I probably would suspect that he would say that. So I don't know why you felt the need to slip that in there, but
the way he is talking to this girl, like literally a girl who is asking very good, honest philosophical questions, and he comes across so condescending. And
do you know this person? Do you know this girl? Is she a friend of yours? How do you know that she's being honest? If they're having the same conversation and they're talking in circles, how do you know that she's being an honest interlocutor? Seems like a bit of an assumption. Please pray for Aron, everybody. Please pray for him.
And so rude. Again, the lack of self-awareness. I'm not trying.
If you think that's Aron being rude and condescending, my boy, you don't know Aron. Listen, he's being polite. I also don't think he said anything rude. Yet.
Trying to be mean, but dude, look in the mirror. You're dressed like a fat vampire. Like just look in the mirror. What are you doing with your life?
Accounting for taste, I guess. I do like the he looks like a fat vampire. But I like the non-commitment he makes this joke with. He is Vegri makes a good point. The dude is white knighting this woman. He kind of is. But if you're gonna go for the joke, go for the joke. If you're gonna call the dude a fat vampire, don't be like, well, I don't want to be mean. Commit. Make a decision. Use your philosophy skills. You learned in Philosophy 101 from your tiny little baby book. What are you doing with your life? I mean, I do enjoy that this man is dressed in like a blazer for his YouTube channel. Am I not dressed appropriately for today? Is it Sunday? Is it at church? Do I have to be wearing specific clothing? Oh, hold on. 1 second. I think I got something. Hold on. Wait 1 second. There we go. Do I look like a fat enough vampire now? Did I do it? Did I make it? Too bad I don't have any red lipstick right nearby. That would have been handy dandy for this bit. Anyway, darling, what are you doing with your life? Do you dress like that every day? Like, there's a degree of, like, if you don't like somebody's style, that's fine. And if you're gonna make a joke about the way somebody looks, also fine. With your white bread haircut, and your white bread face, and your white bread outfit. And that's fine. You're allowed to dress however the fuck you want. But if you're going to make the joke, come into the joke, I'm not trying to be mean. You edited this, you scripted this, you thought this was funny.
Please pray for him. He
Will be
So
right.
what you're telling
if
me
you
now
claim
is you
absolute
could be wrong?
truth, if you claim absolute truth, you're lying to yourself.
Is that absolutely true?
Is what absolute?
What
Yes.
you just said?
Yeah.
So you
if we
don't
claim
believe
absolute
in rel-
truth, if we claim absolute truth, then we're fooling ourselves because you can't improve.
Is that absolutely true?
Yes. For logical reasons, you should
So
understand.
you do believe in absolute truth?
No, I.
She's not understanding this and she thinks she has a gotcha. And it's like a very, like, I made a, what's it called? The little catchers? That, like, 1, 2, 3, 4 catchers? It's like she read it off of, like, a fortune cookie.
Don't. I said you. What could be absolutely true?
All it takes is basic philosophy to totally debunk like someone like Aron Ra, even though he's been doing it
Aron.
for so many years. Just basic philosophical questions, and he starts getting
Mad, he starts getting angry. No, and he starts getting really upset.
uses circular reasoning because he doesn't know the most basic fallacies.
No, what he said actually makes sense. What he was saying is that it's absolutely true that we don't know what we don't know. We can't have full knowledge, and that is absolutely true. You can say that without that being circular. Because it's a, do you know that's true? Yes, because you can't know what you don't know. Now, Aron said it by saying, for logical reasons, which, sure, but the idea of you can't know what you don't know is brute. If you want to talk about brute facts, it's a brute facts because you would never know. So yeah, it's not circular. It just sounds kind of circular, but it's not.
Through testing.
But obviously, we have a much different way of thinking through things, and we have the same scientific
They
method.
don't.
We have the
No, you do not. Absolutely not. You have the exact opposite.
as a Christian-
You have the exact opposite of science. Everything science is or does, faith does the exact opposite. So science cannot ever declare anything to be absolute truth. Period. That's first rule. Shut up.
And so there he said again that no, science will not tell you absolute truth, but what theories will tell you is truth. And is that confusing? Yes. Yes, especially if you're not versed in philosophy and if you're not versed in rhetoric. It's gonna sound confusing and it's gonna sound unclear. And to be fair, it is. It is unclear. Because you're talking about certainty versus knowledge. And if you're saying that you can't know what you don't know, fine. But also, if science is going to give us our best bet, then it's going to give us our best bet because he's talking about consistency and certainty. If you drop a pen, is it going to go up? No. Because there's a degree of pragmatism. Now, again, is Aron the best at having this conversation? No. Should he get better at having the conversation? If he's going to keep having it, probably. But is there a way of getting out of the trap of jargon? Depends on how good you are.
Absolutely true? Yes! Science cannot say that anything is absolute truth. And that is absolutely true. And it's not a contradiction. And everybody understands that.
The fruits of the Holy Spirit are being calm and patient and loving, and we can see that in this girl. If you're a Christian and you're debating, you need to act.
White knight for the girl who was being sarcastic and trying to get a gotcha on a point that she wasn't listening to. He's not being mean to her, he's not yelling at her, he's getting excited. There is nothing wrong with getting excited. Getting excited is an enjoyable experience. And people yell and shout and get into things, and they'll dance around and fling their arms around all over the place when they're having these kinds of conversations. And I get like that too sometimes. And everybody gets like that sometimes. There's nothing wrong. Oh, that was an unfortunate pause face. I apologize. I can't take it anymore. Oh yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there.
Act like a Christian, because if you do, the atheists will make a fool of themselves. Atheism is literal foolishness. That's what the Bible says. In professing themselves to be wise, they made themselves fools. I mean, look at them. We can see the fruits.
What are you doing right now? Are you professing yourself to be wise? With your singular philosophy class and book? Okay.
Of Satanism, what it's doing to him. He can't help but, oh my gosh, these crazy reactions and getting so upset when she's just asking basic questions.
That there is right and wrong. Would you agree that murder is wrong?
Yes, murder is objectively wrong. And so when God commanded people to murder, he was wrong.
According to what standard? Why is what
The
he
objective
did
standard
wrong?
that murder is universally wrong.
What objective?
This question is how you beat any atheist. Oh, these ethics you're talking about, what is your criteria? On atheism, there is no good, there is no evil, there's no reason to do anything, because you cannot derive an ought from an is. Again, if they just studied basic philosophy and ethics and meta-ethics, they would understand the is-ought critique that David Hume brought up. You cannot derive an ought from an is, meaning that an atheist can describe, okay, suffering is happening, but suffering ought not to happen. That will always be a non sequitur. It's not justified. You can never justify it. Why? You can't get...
You can justify anything. Whether or not it's logically consistent is different. Moral philosophy is very complicated, and I would encourage more atheists to study and learn some moral philosophy so they can have conversations that they currently, the major groups, don't seem to be able to have. And part of that has to do with like outragey culture type stuff, yada yada yada, Twitter being a problem. But I digress. Moral philosophy is complicated. What she didn't listen to is that Aron said God was wrong to kill people. And she said, by what standard? And he said, by the standard that we just agreed that murder is objectively wrong. You agree with it because God told you so. I have my own reasons to say that, whatever they happen to be. I don't ascribe to objective morals personally, but that's not relative to the conversation. So, if the Christian presents murder is objectively wrong, and the atheist says, then why is it okay for God to murder people? God was wrong. And the Christian says, by what standard? You've already agreed that the standard is that God is right and told you it was wrong in the first place, because that's what the standard is based off of. That is being discussed. And that's one thing that I'm kind of concerned about, that there might be a bit of a clip job going on with the context of the video we're getting.
Normative statements from the fact that the world is a certain way. So when an atheist makes moral claims, you just have to ask, why?
It's a fact. It's a fact that the world is a certain way. Social philosophy and social evolution are not inherently the way things have to be, right? You understand there's America, right? And then there's not America. And in not America, people do things differently. Hell, from state to state and from city to city, you will find different codes of and like social agreements spoken out loud or not, right? Social etiquettes, right? You have upper class, you have lower class. If you want a more extreme example, you have lower class people having a specific social etiquette, whereas the upper crust may ascribe to a completely different social etiquette, right? So, if you want to talk about the world is the way it is, well, no, people don't have to murder each other. Society doesn't have to decide that murder is wrong. Society can make other decisions, and this is why moral philosophy is so fucking complicated, right? So, a lot of the world doesn't have to be the way it is, particularly when you're talking about social structures. If you want to talk about, like, well, the world is the way it is, as in people die and things fall down, Okay, yeah, people die and things fall down. We can agree about that. Does it have to be that way? I don't know. We've made things fly. We've shot things off of the fucking planet, and they can stay up there ostensibly forever. In some cases. Not so much in other cases. Depending on what we chose. So, do people have to die? Maybe not. Maybe that's not necessary. Is there an inevitable end to everything eventually? Probably. Does it have to be that way? From our perspective right now, in our current time period, with our current information, we don't necessarily know how to prevent that. Does a star have to die? Will humans, who are probably not even considered human anymore, they'd be much more down the evolutionary line and probably mixed with all kinds of cybernetics and shit, would they potentially be able to find a way to empower a particular star to increase its lifespan? Maybe. Why not? Certainly theoretical, but we know what makes up a star, and we know what powers a star, and we know what a star needs to do what it does. So is it possible for us to gather enough resources to throw them into a star to make a star live longer? Doesn't seem terribly unreasonable. I don't know. I am totally transhumanist. Absolutely. Make me a can I have robot legs? I'll take robot legs like yesterday. I would love for people to have easy access to like new eyeballs that function. That'd be great. Hearing aids are fantastic. More of those, please. I am pro transhumanism. If I can download my brain into a computer, as long as it's not like, as long as it's open source and not fucking like Apple doing it, probably not Windows doing it. Man, I had something happen to me today. I gotta talk about this real quick. I'm really sorry. I'm going offside here. I was loading up for this stream, and I was Dapper can confirm this because I sent him a message immediately because it happened while I was talking to Dapper. I was setting everything up, and at the corner of my desktop, right, like here-ish, on my desktop, Microsoft Edge just into existence. It just, something from nothing, Microsoft Edge on my goddamn desktop, and I'm like, why are you here? I didn't do an update. I have done nothing. Why is there suddenly a Microsoft Edge fucking desktop icon on my computer, you piece of garbage that I can't delete and I don't know how to get rid of? I gotta switch to Linux. I'm gonna be going into the Discord and getting, like, help me. Please, help me understand Linux so I can switch all of my computers over and everything that I have over to Linux, because I am very upset. Microsoft Edge is where I draw the fucking line! Draw the line in the sand. What am I willing to put up with today? Now fucking this? Alright, I'm sorry, I'll just go back to the video.
What's good? Where does it come from? Why is that good? Why is that bad? Why? Why? There are no ethics on atheism. It will always...
There are no ethics on atheism. There's no dogma to ethics on atheism. It doesn't mean there are no ethics in that can exist within atheism. It just means that it's subjective to the individual. It's not an overall dogmatic, all atheists believe this, all atheists believe that. That's not how atheism works. Atheism is the I believe that there is no God. I don't believe a God exists. That doesn't inform you on your ethics. That doesn't inform you on your politics. It doesn't inform you on your dietary habits, as some religions inform you on your dietary habits or your hygiene habits. None of these things are encompassed into I don't believe God exists. Because the dogma for that it's not there. It's not a religion in that case. Or in that sense. At all. It doesn't have that dogmatic, you need to, you believe this? Okay, because guess what? One of the reasons why you have so many denominations is because saying you believe in God also does not inform your politics. It also does not inform your ethics. the thing that a lot of Christians use to inform their ethics is the Bible, but you can believe in God and not believe in the Bible. Therefore, believing in God alone does not inherently inform your ethics. Mr. I took philosophy for a class and have a tiny little baby book. Good job. I'm glad you read it. Clearly very thoroughly. Read it? Get it? That's his videos like a fucking Reddit rage comment for some reason. Yay. Dear God. Come on.
Always be their subjective taste preference. When Aron Ross says, oh, that's evil.
Aron.
That's evil. Evil? What's evil? You talk about science and truth. What test tube, what telescope tells us where the evil is? You can't.
Social studies. Social studies would be the thing that you're asking about, which is science. By the way, people who don't think social studies is a science is wrong. It is a science. It has varying kinds of methodologies and some that are more effective than others in different contexts. And they collect data points, which they can then analyze and do data analytics. Data analytics has a more stringent, this is how you analyze data, this is how you look at statistics, and this is how you pull that information. And there are different theories and ways of doing that as well, depending on what you're looking for. Yippee skippy! You can then take that information and plug it into biology, and you can take that information and plug it into physics, and you can take that information and plug it into chemistry. And you can go the other way and say, I'm going to take this thing from chemistry and I want to see how it affects people's lives, like sugar intake. Yay! You can see how much sugar a brain can handle and then take a look and see, well, in this location they have this much % sugar in their diets, and in this location they have this much % sugar in their diets on average. So what does that information tell us about society? Yay, science! Yippee fucking skippy! Whether or not something is good or bad is dictated by its effect on society and how society responds to that. It's constantly changing and constantly in flux due to a very huge number of variables that at this point in time we are not capable of processing. So what does that mean? Well, at the end of the day, what that means is good and evil are arbitrary semantics that we use to describe a situation with a consistent value. So if we say murder is evil, maybe that's subjective. Maybe murder isn't always inherently evil all the time. But you know why murder is neat little tweak in this? Murder isn't killing. Murder is a very specific word. Murder, by definition, is malicious, like purposefully against another person. That's one of the reasons why Aron can go ahead and say murder is objectively wrong, because we define it that way. The term is defined as something as like going out of your way to kill somebody for malicious purposes. You could take that and say, make it more ambiguous and say, oh, well, killing is objectively wrong. Okay, that's a different conversation. We can talk about whether or not you can ever be justified in killing somebody and whether it's always wrong. And then inevitably we end up at Hitler. Hooray! Godwin's Law. We made it. We made it all the way to Hitler. Good job, everybody. So, would it be wrong to kill Hitler? And then we can get even more complicated. And is it wrong to say murder is by definition bad? Yeah, I'm trying to avoid the word bad because it's not a good term to use in this case. But yes, murder by definition is bad. It's a negative thing. We made it to Godwin's Law. And we can get more complicated and say, well, okay, is it okay to kill baby Hitler? Baby Hitler hasn't done anything yet. This is why moral ethics is complicated. Some moral ethics. Duh. Moral philosophy. Ethics, the philosophy of ethics, is complicated. Ta-da! So yeah, you could say murder is objectively wrong, and you'd probably be right by definition alone. Now, if you want to have the more complicated situation, well, did God murder people or did God kill people? Well, if you say God killed people and it was just, then you're defining it as such, right? So if you say God is just, therefore any killing he does is good and justified, therefore whatever killing God did would never be murder. And then you can start arguing semantics, but the telescope's not gonna telescope might give you perspective, but if you want to talk about ethics, no, ethics does not currently exist in a test tube. Although, you can study somebody's brain and their genetic makeup as well as their brain chemistry, and you can look at different types of people and look at how, if their brains look any differently from what they were doing. And you can interview a serial killer and talk to them about why they believe what they believe and what they do, in which case you'd be able to, in fact, actually get data points on socially what is right and wrong. But no, none of this is baked into atheism. Atheism doesn't tell you what is right or wrong. At all. Inherently. It's not what it's for. It's not what it does.
Can't, on a purely materialist worldview, you can't get that. You need God. You need to be justified in your ethical claims. And
that's a leap. No, you can make a justified ethical claim without needing God. That's what philosophy is. Fun fact. I took a class and read a book. You can also jump through a couple hoops and get to whether or not God is morally justified at all. Then you run into semantics, right? But you can also go down this line. You can go down this line of thinking. I'm just going to put this back just a little bit. Just a little baby bit. And say, we can't currently put a measurement on whether or not something is right or wrong, right? We currently cannot put that in a test tube. But there's nothing to say that we might not be able to do so in the future. If you take ethics out of the hands of humans and put ethics into the hands of AI, and an advanced enough AI might have a different answer for you. And with enough practice and with enough data, maybe you'd be able to actually find a definitive, yes, this is the correct answer to the trolley problem. Maybe. There might be variable answers. They might be like, okay, well, if this, then that. But that's not how the trolley problem works. Anyway.
Where the evil is. You can't, on a purely materialist worldview, you can't get that. You need God.
There it is. The purely materialistic worldview. When you say that, I'm not sure I understand what you mean, because you haven't defined your terms. So I assume what you're meaning is there is no spirituality. But I'm not entirely sure, because there are, ideas are non-material unless you define them as, brain chemistry, which you could do. So if you're defining an idea because how do you define a concept in a purely materialistic worldview? That can become problematic, but this really seems like fucking shoehorned in here, I think is what I'm getting at.
You need to be justified in your ethical claims. And I don't think they realize how devastating a critique this is. Because it's not only there's just you can't describe morality, you can't describe good or bad, but it destroys the possibility of debate. Because why do we debate? Before we debate, we assume that we ought to follow the true over the false. But on atheism, there is no reason to follow the true or the false. Either way, it doesn't matter. What reason? Why should we follow the true on atheism?
Well, you could be purely selfish about it, and you could say that, well, it's pragmatic and useful to me to be nice to other people because then other people were more likely to be nice to me. That would be materialistic as you could get, and as selfish as you can get, and as pragmatic as you can get. I bought the coffee for the person who was struggling because it's beneficial for me for them to get the fuck out of my line faster. That is a reason, whether you like it or not. That is a perfectly valid reason for someone to have done something nice for someone else. Or something beneficial for someone else, if you want to take the word nice out of it. So yeah, no, it's not hard. You can justify anything. Whether or not other people are going to buy into your justification, well, that's another story, but most people, believe it or not, think that they're justified in whatever they're doing, and they have justification for it. It's just whether or not that justification holds up to scrutiny.
And why should we follow the false? And we see this is exactly why that they rely on deception and rhetoric, because atheism doesn't care about truth. They care about power, about will to power. Because again, there's no reason to follow the
bait and switch there. I don't know if you guys caught it. Atheism doesn't care about truth. They don't care. Or they care about power. So atheism doesn't care about anything. It's a description of a belief about a very specific thing. So of course it doesn't care about anything. Why would it care about anything? Then you switched to they, as if atheists are a singular entity. And as I've already described, atheism doesn't have a dogma. And so or at least doesn't have a dogma when it comes to political or moral rules. They're all based on the individual. And because it is such an ideal or individualistic thing, that was one of the reasons why you see so many atheist groups fail and why they don't work. Because there's not really any reason to make them about atheism in the first place. You're better off making them secular, because they're going to be far more successful in that case. Getting together to be like, you don't believe in a thing? Yeah, I don't believe in a thing. Yeah, high five. There's not much to talk about after that. Unless you're going to start having discussions of morality, and you're going to start having discussions about, well, what do we think the world should look like? And in which case you're getting into something way more complicated that, as you and I agree on, a lot of atheists don't have enough training to actually have those discussions. And I would probably argue that a lot of people in general don't have the maturity to have that kind of a conversation most of the time. Don't get me started on anything. Never mind. I'm not even going to say anything. You just don't. I just don't. We're not going to go there, because people aren't ready for those kinds of conversations sometimes. Treat people like people.
The true or the false on atheism. It's all about power. And that's why all these pop atheist apologists like Christopher Hitchens and Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins, Aaron Ra, they rely
Aron. His name is Aron. Somebody who does neuroscience, writer, journalist, depending on how you describe Hitchens, and a evolutionary biologist. You didn't name a single atheist philosopher, and I don't know if I would call them pop atheists. Three of them are from the OG, and the OG atheist movement wasn't about whether or not God, the conversation wasn't about whether or not God exists. The conversation was about religion is abhorrent, and religious organizations and dogma are problematic and bad for society. Sam Harris actually has a comprehensive explanation and derivative for morals. So shut up, dipshit. I'm not sure why Aron's getting flung in with this group of three listed. How about name Dennett? You know, the one of that group that did philosophy. Oh, you don't want to talk about Dennett? Okay. Alright, that's fine, I guess.
On rhetoric, on emotional appeals. God is so mean. Oh, they make these basic...
Stop zooming in like that. For the love of God, please, I don't need you when you're talking to just constantly move forward and forward into the camera. You're freaking me out, man. Stop it. Stop it. Yeah, I'm also pretty sure that Sam Harris has a philosophy degree, and yeah, maybe that's what he does for his work, but I doubt it doesn't really matter. The point.
Fallacies, because that's what convinces most people. But if you actually want the truth, you need to study philosophy, and that will lead you to Christ.
Studying philosophy will lead you to Christ? Philosophy, this is not what philosophy does. Mr. Kyle Sir, who took one class of Philosophy 101 and got a tiny book, it shows, philosophy does not talk about that. Philosophy talks about what truth is and how to define it, and there are very, very many philosophical theories. Theory is probably not the best word, but philosophical lines and standards. Struggling with words today. You can only derive so much from thinking about things. There has to be a practical usage. However, you have things like solipsism, and we never go full solipsism. That is you're a brain in a vat, and you can never prove you're not a brain in a vat. The only thing you could prove is that you might be having an experience, maybe. You could barely prove that. Because you can only get so far. You have to live in the world that you live in, and that's why we don't, you have to deal with the experience that you seem to be having. And this is why we never go full solipsism. But if you want to talk about philosophy leading to truth, oh boy. Some would philosophize that truth doesn't exist. Or some would philosophize that truth might exist, but we could never, it is unattainable. That's actually not terribly uncommon. It's been around for a very, very, very long time. There's also something that you mentioned earlier that says, well, we are limited by being what we are. Things come through a certain perspective, but I would go a step further. I would go a step further and say, we're limited by our faculties. We are human beings, and we are limited by our biology, period, end of sentence. And even though we are able to sometimes reach a little bit further beyond that, due to instrumentation, that instrumentation is still limited by A, what we can create and make, and B, it has to translate into something we can understand. And so we are limited by that understanding. You have to be able to read the math, which means you have to have the math written down in some way, shape, or form, or conceptualized in a way that we can understand it. That's why we struggle with time. Time is difficult, and why we struggle with quantum and celestial. It's complicated, and it's hard for us to wrap our minds around. It certainly is not, philosophy is not going to lead you to Christ. Not by the fact that it is, in fact, philosophy. Could you find Christ through philosophy? Sure, yeah, you could do that. But philosophy isn't about that. That's not, no. Again, this is a particular branch of philosophy. There is a philosophy of argumentation, there's a philosophy of self, and there's a philosophy of the world and everything. I mean, you could certainly use philosophy to go in that direction, but philosophy doesn't have an intent. And it's no guarantee, that's for sure.
Because you have the armor of God and the helmet of God, and these are things supposed to steel your mind against reason so that you will never be convinced by anyone's earthly arguments. Remember, the Bible is the only truth and everything else is a lie. So, everything has to be wrong. Reality has to be wrong in order for this belief to be right.
You can see how spiteful he is, because this is just a straw man. No serious Christian has ever said this.
And that's called the no true Scotsman fallacy. Thank you, Mr. Philosophy class, who's complaining about other people being fallacious.
Oh, everything outside the Bible is absolutely wrong. No, the Bible is infallible, and it's an important part of history.
You literally then just said the thing that you said nobody says. The Bible being infallible inherently means that everything in the Bible has to be correct and the truth. And if Aron is talking about, which I assume he is talking about, the King James version of the Bible, or some iteration thereof, yeah, there's some things in there that are just factually not possible. And you could argue that, well, that was a miracle and God did it. And then that leads you down a different line of questioning. There's some contradictions in that book there, eh? So to believe that it's 100% true and infallible means that you are having to throw out facts of the matter and throw out the contradictions, which is the reality. The reality is that the book has contradictions in it. I have the biggest brain. Which one's my own true Scotsman? Tell me.
It's God's revelation to mankind, but again, there is truth because God itself created the universe. God made reality. He made a world that was logically ordered. The only reason the world is intelligible is because it was made by an intelligence. This is totally contrary to the gospel. He is
Non sequitur into a rant.
straight up just lying. I'm not trying to be mean, but do atheists not know how to dress themselves? I mean, what is he wearing? He like literally went out of his way to buy this shirt. You look at what they're wearing at the satanic invocation, the bunch of blue-haired people. Like, I'm not trying to be mean, but it's just like the aesthetics, like what are you doing? It's just like a lack of self-awareness. It's honestly,
this bro had more than one take of that joke, and he thought that this version of that joke was so good he wanted to add it into the end. Oh my god, they have blue hair. Ugh. Not blue hair. Oh my god. That's my favorite part of this whole video. Yeah, the t-shirt, by the way, if you want to read it, says, there is no God but Allah, just kidding, there is no God. Yeah, I think that might be Aron's shirt. Like, I think he might be the one who designed that. I'm not 100% sure. Oh, no, listen, okay, hold on. We are not gonna let the Orthodox Christians define, like, be in charge of fashion. Like, no. I refuse. I'm sorry. And I don't mean to be mean, but your aesthetics are fucking Wonder Bread, milk toast, white guilt nonsense. we're not dealing with this. I refuse, as a white person, I do not need your Wonder Bread style senses imposed on me. I like my clothes, alright? Leave me alone. You want to dress like a fat vampire, you dress like a fat vampire. You want to dress like a regular vampire, you dress like a regular vampire. You want to dress like a punk edgelord, you dress like a punk edgelord. You want to dress up like you're gonna go molest some teenagers at youth group, you go ahead and you dress like that, Kyle. If you're gonna make the joke, I don't mean to be mean. Just commit to it, dude. You lose the funny part when you try to justify it.
you look at what they're wearing at the satanic invocation, the bunch of blue-haired people. Like, I'm not trying to be mean, but it's just like the aesthetics, like what are you doing? It's just like a lack of self-awareness. Just honestly feel bad. People like
I'm talking, but I'm muted. I read what Dapper said. He said, I don't think we should let Kyle be representative of all Eastern Orthodox Christians. That's fair. I'm sure there are some Eastern Orthodox Christians that do have a sense of style, that aren't so up their own ass that they get offended by somebody having blue hair. Fucking lol. We know he's presenting himself as an authority, but we don't have to take him as an authority. And I agree with that.
Like if you enjoyed the video, comment if you want me to respond to more Aron Ra videos or specific atheists, and I will do it. And I just feel bad, you know, for these people who are convinced by people like Aron Ra. They have been sold
Aron. His name is Aron.
short. They don't know basic philosophy. You've been sold a deception, and
this guy doesn't know basic philosophy. And I don't know what the deception is when Aron says he doesn't know philosophy. I feel like he's not lying.
We need to be rooted in the truth, and that requires studying philosophy. And if you are an Orthodox Christian, you read the Church Fathers, and they were very, very philosophical, and they prepare us to deal with any fallacies, any heresies like this. I hope you enjoyed the video. God bless.
Well, that was... I hope you all enjoyed. I had a good time. That was a little bit more fun than I thought it was going to be. I thought that was gonna be way more painful than it was the first time I watched it. I think being able to talk about it and having you guys give me your input during that helped me make it through this situation. I really hope you guys leave a comment below with how many fallacies you counted that Kyle engaged in. Oh my god, chat. Okay, there we go. Chat was catching up on my end, so there was like just a bunch that just came through. What are you doing with that haircut? Aron never claimed to be presenting basic philosophy. This is true. Isn't hearsay a fallacy? Somebody said that I know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows. Send this kid a copy of Pokemon and see how he pronounces the names. Yeah, if you guys give me count the number of fallacies and if you can name them off, I'll give you extra points if you can give the timestamp for it. I think Chesh is pointing out more often how Aron is supposed to be spelt out more than Aron does. Yeah, maybe. I think he's doing it on purpose. I think he's being like just a disrespectful little shit. I could be wrong. Maybe he's just stupid. What is that rule? It's the don't attribute malice when you could attribute stupidity. I'll let you guys decide. Why should we gather these points? I don't know. Welcome to the show where rules are made up and the points don't matter. This is about all I had for today, for this, because I just found this video and I was like, oh, I would also like somebody to do me a favor and point out where the debunk was, because I didn't see one. Like, that was not a debunk. And as somebody who is quite critical of Aron, particularly in the fields of philosophy, and who's friends with people who are quite critical of Aron in fields of history, for example, that, like, Aron is not infallible. He's not some big old... He's also not even that scary. I didn't even find him being, like, rude or mean in any of those clips. There are definitely clips where I've seen, and like, debates that I've watched him, like, lose his shit on a point that somebody wasn't even making. Like, that happens sometimes. And, like, Aron's not infallible. He can be a dick. Aron! Can we be friends? I don't wanna die on a agnostic atheist rock hill. Notice me, senpai! I'm kidding. I don't care. It's fine. I feel weird. I feel weird defending Aron. Because he's wrong about this stuff. But it's not what he... this video didn't do a good job of pointing that out. Well, thank you for joining me, everybody. I appreciate you coming. Thank you for super chatting if you did. Thank you for becoming a member if you did. If you haven't, please consider becoming a Patreon or a member. I greatly appreciate the assistance and financial support. If you're unable to financially support, great, no problem. Feel free to like and subscribe. If you learned something, share the video, because that's great. Please leave me a comment with the number of, or if you want to support more directly, there is an Amazon wishlist, and that Amazon wishlist has now had all of the Wizards of the Coast content within it removed, because fuck those people. We'll be talking about that a little bit more later today, so please join meet later today at, I believe, 6 p.m., so in about 2 hours. I will be live again, talking actually about the OGL with a couple of creators. We're having another panel, but instead of having an open panel, this one's going to be a little bit more directed. So, thank you so much for coming. Look out for that one. The link for that should be available as soon as I finish making the thumbnail for it. Helios for 5 said, Aron believes rocks are atheists, and that is Chesh's only discussion with him, and that is hilarious for so many reasons. I know, it's sad and funny. Aron, it's only 1A. Anyway, I'm gonna get on out of here. I look forward to seeing improvements in the atheist community over time, and that's kind of why I'm having some of the discussions I have had. So we did one with some atheists, we did one with some Christians just last Wednesday, and we're doing another one this Wednesday. So if you are a little bit more interested in these types of conversations about atheism versus Christianity or versus other religions, and kind of sussing out what works, what doesn't, and how to approach people, we're having another one of those conversations on Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to take off out of here, and I will see you in like 2 hours. Goodbye!